Hey guys, today we are talking about putting multiple parrotlets together in a cage. What the rules are. If you're new to my channel, I'm Kaylin, the author of the Parrot Bliss Bond, along with several other parrot books. Check my books out on Amazon. We're talking to you, of course, about parrotlets. So we're going to also watch to see how some of the parrotlets in our video are behaving. But to get you to understand how you can very easily put parrotlets together, because I had someone asking about putting 2 together and someone asking about putting 8 together. To do so, we're going to talk about the quick, easy rules, so to speak. Number 1, the very most important thing is having an appropriate cage for your parrotlets. If your cage is too small, you're gonna have problems. Your parrotlet's cage needs to be large enough so that exponentially for every parrotlet you add, there's plenty more room. And maybe not double the room, but really be significant and be generous about the space that you increase the cage by. Why? Because that allows parrotlets to sort of own different branches, different sides of the cage, and it gives them the space to fly away if they need to go to a different area to get away from a bird. One of the hardest things to identify can be finding any aggressive parrotlets, if you have an aggressive parrotlet or pair. And that pair basically might bully some of the other parrotlets. So it's important to sort of recognize who's aggressive. Because in an aggressive cage, you might have a really big cage. I had an aviary that I could stand in, and the aggressive pair still managed to make it hard for some of the others to live with them. And it's not like I had 1,000 in there. I did not have that many at all, and it should have been totally fine. And it was totally fine. I think I had like 10, 15 in there. It was totally fine the minute I took the aggressive pair out. So sometimes when you have that aggressive pair, they can't be in there with everyone else. They haven't learned to get along. So you got to watch for that. But cage size is really huge. If you can get one of those big flight cages that are like, I think they're about 3 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and then like 3 or 4 feet tall, something like that. You know, that's a pretty good size for something like 8 parrotlets. You might actually look at the cage and go, I don't even see the parrotlets because the cage is kind of big. And that's a little exaggerated, but that's sort of what you want. You want them to have plenty of space, plenty of perches, plenty of room to hide. One of the other things that along those lines that's really important, one of our rules, is you do want to have plenty of space for the perches and the feeding stations. I think it's really important. I find that I can do one water, like they don't mind sharing the water. But when it comes to feeding stations, the pellets, or the fresh food, or if I put parakeet seeds in, or millet, anything like that, I really need about 1 feeding station, maybe per pair of parrotlets. They do tend to buddy up. They do tend to have one other, either mate or best bud kind of thing. And then they kind of like to go to a feeding station and say, this is ours. And it doesn't mean that they won't let anyone else go to it. But for me, that means that often for every 2, maybe 3 parrotlets that I have, sort of depending on how aggressive they are or are not, I make sure to put in another area with pellets, seeds. You know, like generally speaking, if I have like 4 to 6 parrotlets in a small aviary that suits them, that there's plenty of space, that means that I'm going to have like 2 pellet stations, and if I have seeds or fresh food, 2 of those. Just so that it's sort of dispersed around and they can go in and get the food without having to feel like someone else owns it and like it might not be safe. It just gives them that opportunity. Rule number 3, the age of the birds. If you have a baby parrotlet with adults, that's not going to work out. They have to all be adults. If you have an older parrotlet that's 2, 3, 4, 5 years old with a 1-year-old or something like that, that might be okay, but really think of it as if they were people. If you had someone who was midlife, do they really want to cohabitate with like a teenager? Probably not. Do they want to cohabitate with a baby? Absolutely not. So you kind of want to match the ages. If you're able to match the ages, that's going to make things a lot easier. Along those lines, if you get a few babies and they grow up together and then you put them when they're a little older into a bigger flight cage together, they're going to do great. Why? They already know each other. I can actually take parrotlet pairs and, like, let's say I let them breed so they were by themselves, or conures, and then I put them back together in a group setting. So I take away the nest boxes and I put them in a bigger aviary to share a space. When they know each other, there isn't really a problem. There's some sort of readjustment, and for that readjustment, we make sure that we put in plenty of food so there's no competition over resources. And then they're like, oh, there's food, I remember you, and they're fine. So that really helps too when they have grown up together. That's not always possible. And even when that's not possible, like even when I've had two elderly, not elderly, but adults, like they're not young parrotlets, they tend to like each other. When I have two younger parrotlets, they tend to like each other, and then grouping them together works really well. Can I take that younger pair and the older pair and put them in a cage together? I can, and that would be fine, but I do want to look at the last rule, which is really monitor their behavior. It should be fine because they're paired up, so they're happy because they have their buddy, but you always have to monitor, especially when you're first trying to put them together. When you're first trying to put them together, if there's any chasing around, if there's any toe biting, this is not working out. Either you need a bigger cage, you have a bully, or for whatever reason, it's just not going to work. You can't push it. You have to really let them do what they're going to do anyway, because you can't watch them 24/7. If you have the ability to have your parrotlet pairs or whatever, however they're already buddied up, side by side in side-by-side cages, and then you put them into a larger aviary, that might work, because even though they were in their own spaces, they kind of get to know each other. It's like neighbors. Fortunately, your neighbor doesn't live in your house, but you get to know them next door, and so talking to them is fine, and then maybe going on vacation with them to a new setting works out fine, which is our last rule. When you are putting those parrotlets together, they do have to go into a new cage where nobody owns the territory. So it's not like the neighbor's coming in and now living with me. It's more like the neighbor and I are both going to go live in something bigger. And that's not as hard to do as someone encroaching on my space. So you do have to have that new cage, that new space. Now, if you have a cage that's big enough and one of the pairs or something like that, some of the parrotlets were in there, you can temporarily take them out, fully wash the cage, fully clean it, take everything out of it, and put things back in a new way, so that when the parrotlets go in, they kind of don't recognize it. The perches are in different places. Maybe the food's in a different place. Like, everything's changed. Maybe there's new toys. Maybe there's new perches. Now you can reuse that cage because you've sort of made it new again, with everything going back in a different way, and hopefully with new perches and things like that. So there you have the rules on how to successfully put your parrotlets together. Works for conures too. Don't forget, one of the most important rules was you have to watch them. But number one was cage size. The bigger, the better. You really want to make sure they have plenty of space to kind of claim their own little spaces in the cage and space to get away from each other. Number two, the age of the birds. You want to try to match ages. And a baby that's under like 6 months, 8 months, maybe even 10 months, it depends on the baby and sort of how well they're doing with the adults. Those babies, they should never be in with the adults. The adults will hurt them. Number three, feeding areas. You always want multiple feeding areas. If you have multiple parrotlets, multiple feeding areas, multiple perches. And the last one, always monitor. Always make sure that they're doing well. They might do well for 3, 4, 5 days, even a week, maybe even 2 weeks, and then something might happen. And if that happens, it just is what it is, and it's time to take out whoever's injured and put them in something else. It's time to see why that might be happening. And often, if there are enough resources, it doesn't happen. So just make sure that you've got plenty of perches, plenty of feeding stations, so that the parrotlets feel like everything is safe and secure, and then they're more likely to behave in that way. I hope these rules help you to successfully put your parrotlets together, because there is an old myth that they should be alone, which makes no sense, because how would they ever reproduce? And they're small birds. They rely on that flock to keep them safe, keep them secure, and help them find food. Sure, in captivity, they don't need as much of that, but that feeling of safety and security that a bird gets from having other birds around, especially other ones of their own same species in their same cage, is priceless. That makes a huge difference and contributes quite significantly to their well-being. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, place them below, and I'll catch you next time.